Every good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. This one, however, starts in the middle because that is where we now are. The date is February 9th, 1996. The location, the Chautauqua Ranch, just outside the city limits of Ashland, Oregon. This is the heart of the Rogue Valley, a land rich in both history and natural beauty. Here in the shadow of the Siskiyou Mountains lie some of America's most productive farmlands. Cattle graze in lush meadows, and in the rolling foothills are the orchards and vineyards that have made this picturesque valley one of the state's most desirable places to live. The Chautauqua Ranch, 40 acres of prime pasture and farmland, whose historic roots date back to the 19th century. Here, travelers along the Siskiyou Trail frequently rested and drew water from Bear Creek, which bisects the eastern portion of the property. The original farmhouse and barn date back more than 100 years. Today, the acreage is zoned for agriculture and the buildings for elementary school use. These are important facts because on this date, the Waldorf School of the Rogue Valley arrived at the threshold of a new beginning. Today, this exceptional property became ours, and now a dream will become a reality. The property is ideal, and this new campus will provide us with an unprecedented opportunity to improve and to grow. And now, to the true beginning of our story. Near the turn of the century, Dr. Rudolf Steiner began to study the human senses, the nervous system, and their rhythmic organization. In 1919, the first school, based on Steiner's new approach to education, opened as a free school in Stuttgart, Germany. Originally created to provide a meaningful education for the children of the workers in the Waldorf Astoria cigarette factory, the number of schools has steadily increased. There are now 125 Waldorf schools in North America and over 700 worldwide. The Waldorf School of the Rogue Valley was established in 1979 in Medford, Oregon, and moved first to Jacksonville and finally to Ashland in 1990. In keeping with the Steiner philosophy, we strive to awaken the unique individuality of the child so that each becomes a creative, knowledgeable, self-directed individual with a sense of compassion and responsibility. A unique feature of the Waldorf approach is the arrangement of the school day. It begins with the academic work of the main lesson, when the intellect is fresh and ready for learning. The middle of the day is devoted to rhythmic work, including music, grammar, and foreign language. In the afternoon, when energy levels rise, students learn the lessons of the active will, such as woodworking, clay modeling, and physical education. The key is to introduce each subject at the right time in the child's life and in the right way, so that it interests and stimulates the student at that age level. In the Waldorf kindergarten, we lay the foundation for the intellectually stimulating curriculum which lies ahead. Just how this approach is different is explained by kindergarten teacher Jacine Abraham.
The most important thing that they've discovered about young children is that they are really different than adults, that their thinking is different and that their worldview is different, and they call it magical. It's pretty scientific.
The design of the Waldorf kindergarten is different too. Look around. There are no intimidating structures. All the materials are familiar. There is color, and to a child an endless array of wonderful things to use in constructing a magical world of their own making. It is a place where childhood becomes a valuable asset, not something to be suppressed or prematurely terminated.
The difference between the Waldorf and an ordinary kindergarten is that we don't try to hurry them into that world of mature thinking and rational concepts, and instead honor the fact that they live in a very different worldview and that they feel the whole world is alive. They feel the trees are alive. They think the clouds move across the sky because they want to go somewhere.
To a child, a molded plastic speedboat can never be more than that. But with a table, a couple of chairs, and scraps of wood, we are aboard the Calypso. Scuba divers search the ocean floor for rare shells. And under the warm, tropical sun, the fishing is always good. At this age, much learning is acquired through imitation. Making soup capitalizes on this by creating an encounter with dividing whole vegetables into parts and with volumes and measuring. Socialization skills begin to emerge, and the concept of sharing and working together in an imaginary scene fosters creative skills which will be carried into adulthood. It is also a time when individuals begin to struggle for their independence, where concentration and persistence begin to develop. Everything is new. It is a world of wonder. Born around the same time as thinking, fantasy is a powerful partner to it. If fantasy is allowed to ripen side by side with thinking, these two faculties mature into the capacity to visualize not only how things are, but how they might be. By allowing children to experience their childhood, the qualities which contribute to creative independence in adulthood are nurtured and enhanced at their very source.
It has profound implications for their whole life, and it has ecological implications. It has spiritual implications, because if they have that connectedness and it's nurtured rather than prematurely separated, it's there for them forever.
Kindergarten was a time when the mind and imagination were allowed to roam free, while the child grew ready for the grade school experience, where the imaginative powers are aroused to an even greater degree. In the first and second grades, fairy tales, fables, and legends have a riveting appeal. Second grade teacher Daniel Stokes is a master storyteller. Through the story, the lesson lives, and both knowledge and moral messages are acquired and embedded deeply.
And in those early years, 5, 6, 7, children still think pictorially. They still think in images rather than abstract concepts.
Writing comes out of the children's art. Then their capability to read evolves as a natural ability at this stage of their mastery of language and communications. The main lesson books of the early grades are often illustrations of stories told in class. They record the child's crucial first steps into the concepts of notation, leading to writing, reading, and mathematics.
We build up reading skills by heightening the quality and the relationship to language. So, for example, our children will be a part of learning to read is building imaginative faculties so that they're able to actually make imaginative pictures. The whole thing that develops interest in reading is how alive your imagination is, so that you can bring the pictures to what you're reading to bring that book or that story alive. If you build up this work through the imagination and through pictures in those early years, the children have a lot more breadth and a lot more access to their imagination when they are starting to read. Often we find in Waldorf that our children, some of the ones that start reading slowly, even aren't reading real fluently in third grade, suddenly they're reading the classics. It's a mysterious thing where somehow the penny drops, the mysteries are unraveled, and they've made it. But they've brought with them a whole background and depth of language and classical literature.
By the second grade, math problems include multiplication and division. Mastery of this third R involves an equally artful approach.
Then laid onto that is the 4 table, and you can see that in the blue star. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and it will repeat itself as if by magic. And then, of course, you have just the activity of trying to draw straight lines, which we do a lot of work with form drawing in the classes, and it is very therapeutic in terms of bringing balance and form. And you'll see later in those pictures in your 8th grade main lesson books, this is where it all begins.
By the 3rd grade, students have become inquisitive about the practical aspects of life, food, clothing, and managing one's existence in the real world. The need for units of measure arises and provides a focus for math lessons, which now take on significant relevance. By grade 5, social development is enhanced through the discussion of history and mythology. The study of ancient civilizations, Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Indian, provide the springboard into lessons in law and government.
In the younger grades especially, working with the multiplication tables of 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 3 is 6, and so forth. We start with what is whole first. 6 is 3 times 2. 8 is 4 times 2.
7 is 1 times 7. 14 is 2 times 7.
In grades 6 through 8, the sciences receive increasing emphasis. The ability to record visual experiences now proves to be invaluable. And what the students encountered in a direct and sensual way in the lower grades is now transformed into genuine scientific inquiry.
We first go back to the roots of science and start working with what is actually observable. What's real observable phenomena. So we'll take a tuning fork and strike it. And there'll be a needle on the end of the tuning fork. And we'll run that vibrating tuning fork across a soot-blackened piece of glass. And lo and behold, you get a line doing this all the way down. And they look at it. And all of a sudden, they start to make connections that vibration is happening at the same time that they hear a tone coming from the tuning fork.
It is not sufficient to line up and memorize the dry facts. Students need to be emotionally affected. When teachers create actual encounters with natural phenomena, there is a more lasting impression.
From 6th grade on, we start working formally with geometry and again bringing the concepts to them. In the 6th and 7th grade and part of the 8th grade, the geometry is still 2-dimensional, but then what happens in the 8th grade is it kind of blooms into 3 dimensions. And here we worked with creating the Platonic solids. For instance, the tetrahedron, which is the simplest of the Platonic solids, Plato connected to the element of fire. So the students, before they drew these drawings, the first thing you see, of course, are the drawings, but they worked with a flat sheet of card paper and had to work out how they would make the pattern to create this in 3 dimensions, which they did.
The students and their parents take great pride in the craftsmanship, artistry, and academic vigor reflected in these completed works.
Now the children, the graduates of the Waldorf schools, save their textbooks. And a comment we often hear from graduates is that in their science classes, in high school and even into college, they look back at their main lesson books in science.
What is most revealing about these works is the role art has played in almost every lesson since the 1st grade. At a time when arts are being minimized or even eliminated in many schools, Waldorf educators are striving to strengthen them. Here it is not a compartmentalized subject presented without any relationship to the rest of the study program, but is woven into the entirety of the curriculum. In studies conducted by independent scientists, Waldorf students test consistently higher than students attending conventional schools and have achieved an educational plateau well above average. they are well prepared for their high school and college careers. Another feature of the Waldorf education is that all students learn a second language, such as French or German. This begins with songs and games in the first and second grade. Gradually, grammar and composition are introduced, and before long, learning occurs in the same natural way English was mastered just a few years earlier. In our modern environment, increasing emphasis is placed on intellectual work, while manual skills are on the decline. There are ever fewer opportunities for imitating and practicing movements which are in themselves healthy. Studies of early development of the nervous system show a close connection between the development of fine motor skills and speech and later cognitive skills. The hands are trained to be skillful. The eye is taught to observe.
Your perfect mouse is hidden in that block of wood, and you just need to take off the right little parts of the wood, and then it'll be there.
In learning the qualities of materials and the appropriate use of tools, the final product emerges. Determination and the strength of will required to complete a work assignment is visibly demonstrated. Now it is not the teacher who corrects the student, but the reality of the finished product, which speaks a clear and unmistakable language. Music and singing are also vital elements of the curriculum, and no other activity allows such an expression of joy and freedom of spirit. In teaching, knowledge must become alive. The educator's task is to allow pupils to build up a living relationship with what they are learning. The aesthetic nature of a lesson is as important to the child as the content. Therefore, a good lesson is a work of art. The ability to enthuse students and to impart to them the love of learning is something that will remain with them their whole lives. We teach our students to respect their partnership with the material world. How better, then, may this role be appreciated than to be close to the land which supports us. Our 2-year search for a perfect site for our campus has finally ended. The old Chautauqua Ranch meets or exceeds all our established criteria. It has been operating as a private school for many years, so many of the improvements which would otherwise be required have already been made. The 10 acres which extend from Main Street to the rear of the existing compound offer an excellent opportunity to expand the classroom facilities, as well as room for athletic fields, gardens, and parking. Behind the barn, the land gently slopes to the east toward Bear Creek. This portion of the ranch includes almost 30 acres of prime pasture. A little over half the 30 acres lies beyond the creek. It is equally well suited for farming or light grazing. We envision a series of nature trails leading to areas of aesthetic as well as scientific interest. These include the creek and its riparian habitat, a small wetland area, and numerous rock outcroppings which harbor a variety of unusual life forms. No landscape architect could have designed a more suitable outdoor classroom. A variety of small animals will reside on the ranch, such as sheep, rabbits, a few goats, and perhaps 1 or 2 dairy cattle. The milk, cheese, and wool will all contribute to the learning process. For the physical plant, we envision a modest program of expansion which will add approximately 2,900 square feet of new classroom space and later a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot performing arts building. The driveway will be improved to serve the new facilities, and ample parking will be provided for both motor vehicles and bicycles. A Waldorf education could not be complete without a close relationship to the natural world. Here, students will be surrounded by the things they love most: animals, trees, all that is needed to build a firm foundation for both scientific and the practical approach to nature. While the scenic qualities of the campus with its dramatic views have great appeal, no mountain vista is more beautiful than the wonderful children of our school. The children of the Waldorf School of the Rogue River Valley.